You're watching Salina Media Connection. U.S. Senate candidate Usha Reddi spoke with voters at Astra Books and Coffee House in Salina on Sunday, October 20th, 2019. Reddi is currently serving as a Manhattan City Commissioner. The following program lasts about 50 minutes.
I've been in Manhattan for the past 26 years. Raised our 3 children there. They're all grown up, but they went to K-12 in Manhattan. And during that time I was volunteering, and one of the principals said, go and get an education degree. So I went back to Kansas State University, got my elementary education degree, and started teaching first grade. And do we have more people coming in? Yeah, please come on in and join us. Pull up a chair. So I was a first grade teacher at Ogden Elementary School. And Ogden is a high needs school, but it also has a lot of transient population, military and everything else. During that process, I also became our union representative for our teachers union. So I was president for our teachers association. I negotiated contracts, worked with lots of organizations to better educate our children, as well as make better working conditions for our teachers and families. And then I ran for State Board of Education, which was a 23-county region. And right after that, I did not win that one, so I ran for City Commission. I was attending the City Commission meetings in Manhattan because they were going to cut social services. And a lot of my students use Big Brothers, Big Sisters, Pawnee Mental Health, Manhattan Shelter, Emergency Shelter. So all of those were going to be impacting my students and their families. So by going there, people encouraged me to run for City Commission, so I ran for City Commission. 2013, I won my election. I was mayor in 2016, ran again in 2017. So this is my second term on the City Commission, and I will be mayor again next year. But I was still an education teacher. So my principal was accommodating enough to say, you don't have to leave education if you still want to continue teaching. Why don't you work until 10:30 or 11, co-teach math with some of the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th grade teachers. And then I was doing my government duties the rest of the day. So I just took a leave of absence recently, thank you, just for this, to see how this election goes. So as was mentioned, being a teacher, a mom, a public educator, being part of a local governance, I see how the state and federal budgets impact every decision I make, whether as a teacher or a parent or as an elected official. And you know, I was, like I said, I was married, but I was divorced for about 7 or 8 years during that time. And you know, people said, well, welcome to poverty. I didn't realize, you know, 80% of my income left with my ex. So here I was, a single mom. I had great insurance as a teacher, but I had a $2,000 deductible. And I was going to the doctors, but I could never meet my deductible. So I quit going because I couldn't afford $200 every now and then, or $150. So even though insurance was great, I couldn't do it. And my 3 children, you know, when they're teenagers, that's when their teeth get all awkward, and you got to start getting braces. Well, I could only afford it for 2 of the 3. And as a parent, it hurts you because you got to pick which child is going to get the braces or not, eyeglasses and such stuff. So those were just terrifying times. And as a teacher on a teacher's paycheck, just living paycheck to paycheck, and that last week living on ramen noodles or rice or something because you're just waiting for that paycheck so you can pay your bills, and not being able to pay off all your credit card because you can only do the minimum because you still have 3 children that you got to take care of. So these were all needs and life experiences that helped me work when I work as a city commissioner. That's what I think of, what my life was like and what it still is like when I think about my kids. And I think this is a time when if the Senate seat is open, like it is now, we have options. And with Laura Kelly and Sharice Davids win, I feel like there's an opportunity for change. And I think being as hard as I work, and this is my everyday life. This isn't something I do on the side. I just think about policies nonstop. Mental health became a big initiative for me as a city elected official. It's usually a county thing, but I took it on as a city because being on law board, we saw a lot more people, individuals with mental illness, come in conflict with the law that were ending up in jail. And some of them didn't even know they had substance abuse issues or that they had a mental illness of any kind, that were never diagnosed for it. So we were able to budget with a lot of work on my behalf and a few other city commissioners to get 2 co-responders to work with body mental health and our law enforcement. That changed the entire culture of law enforcement. So here were police officers, they were there, you know, let's go get them, they broke the law, let's go the process. Now they had to slow down a little bit, get some kind of a screening done for these individuals, and now they're taking them and giving them resources, following up with them. So that was a culture shift for our police department. We worked with Tim Peck and now Laura Howard with the KDADs and we got a stabilization center. We just did a ribbon cutting for a stabilization center for Pawnee Mental Health, and we were very instrumental in that. Things don't happen overnight, especially solutions. So those take a lot of collaboration, building relationships, and making it go forward. And then you have to pass the baton to the next person so they don't dismantle what you just did. And to keep it moving forward. So as a public educator, I think Betsy DeVos was one of the worst things that ever happened as far as appointments. I think it's ruining it for our public education, and it's ruining it for higher education. Excuse me, college debt is a big problem. My 3 kids have a $50,000 debt, each of them. I didn't have to think about that as I was graduating from college. They're thinking about how to put off marriage, put off buying a house or a car. These are not choices I had to make. We had a path, and we're good. So I feel sad for this generation that works so hard. But again, as a public school teacher, I don't want my public school education fund siphoned off to other schools or other entities. Sorry.
So sorry.
Okay. Or for a wall or anything like that. I think people that are on those committees need to have public education in their background. They need to be experts or know about what it is they're being administrators for. Just like we expect that from our principals, we should expect that from our secretaries of state, secretary of education, whatever it is they're appointing to. I think Brett Kavanaugh is the other worst thing that ever happened. So one of the things that happened in my life during that period was I was sexually assaulted as well, and I was in the process of putting my father away in jail. And then when this was happening with Brett Kavanaugh, it was devastating to me to see what was going on. And so that impacts all of our lives for many years, and we can't get back what we lost. So some of those things are very personal, but I feel like federal policies impact our life. And for our children and for the investment of our future, we have to look at change. And we can do it. It's not going to be easy. But nothing in my life has ever been easy. So I think it's something that I'm willing to fight for and work hard for, and I have nothing to lose in this race. I think we have a lot to gain in the state, and I think Kansas is looking for a fighter right now, and I think I can do that. So I'm going to leave that up to, I'm going to leave it open to questions, and we'll take it from there. Hello. We have more. Come on in. Are they with us? I'm not sure. I feel like I don't want to treat our customers.
We have our current mayor.
Oh, okay, there you go.
Dr. Trent Mayor. Current mayor.
I'm Usha Reddi. I'm running for U.S. Senate.
Nice to meet you, ma'am.
Nice to meet you too. Thank you. Yes, and I will take any questions you have, and I don't know how much time you have, but I will.
4 o'clock.
Oh, well, there you go. We got quite a bit of time.
I have a question.
Yes.
I can't believe that Manhattan passed allow you to go topless.
Okay. There's a story behind that.
Maybe it makes
So
sense.
here's the
then.
story behind that. So we didn't, that's not what we were looking for. And yes, we do have other things to do. But this was important because there was lawsuits coming from Manhattan is one of the few areas that even had any kind of regulation. The state of Kansas doesn't have any rules about topless. You can go topless wherever you want. We don't have those. Manhattan did have a rule. So we were the anomaly in that case. So the lawsuits that were going on in other states were about gender equality. Men can go topless and women couldn't. The state of Kansas doesn't have anything. Manhattan was the only one that did. So we just took that out in the sense that everybody should have that option, whether they want to go topless or not. Now, is everybody going to go topless? I doubt it. But if we kept that rule in where a woman has to wear a top and men don't, we have to change the ordinance so that even men have to wear tops at swimming pools. And so we have to go one way or the other. So do you think, I don't think all the women are just going to go topless, but I'm not sure if we had went the other way, it makes us seem even, I don't know, not as open, I think.
Can I speak to this real
Yes,
quickly?
please do.
One, from my perspective as a lactation counselor, it does matter because women get harassed in public all the time when they breastfeed their babies. So with those kinds of laws in place, we already have the law on our side that we can feed our baby anywhere we need to, anytime. If you have a right to be in a public place, you have a right to feed your baby. But women have actually been kicked out of public places because someone complained because I could see their breast when they were feeding their baby. So there's more to it than just the right to run around without our shirts on.
And there are some men
just
that
saying.
just have their shirts on too. I see that from everybody, but it's an option, and that's what it is. And
I'm
we'll see.
only speaking to the news stories that I think I recall. Wasn't there something in the clause about any incendiary behavior or something like that? What the language was.
Right. If
That
it's
would be-
lewd and cruel behavior, you
Yeah.
still get fined. But right now, we were just fining people for no reason at all. And there's lawsuits going to the Supreme Court based on this. And there were sit-ins from women that were just helpless to see what you would do. And this makes it also what we had talked to our Kansas State University Police Department as well as our Riley County Police Department to make sure, everything is above board. This isn't something we were looking at. We have lots of things we need to discuss, infrastructure, water, flooding, everything else. But this was necessary and probably for the better in the long run.
But still, when you go into a restaurant or a business, most of them say no shirt, no shoes,
Right.
no service, so.
And in public businesses, they can do whatever they want. Yeah. A public business has rules because it's a public business. But in a private area where we're paying our police officers taxpayer money for certain things for the city, it makes a difference. So, yeah. Yes.
One of my
No, go ahead.
one of my passions is children who are suffering in school, lack of instruction at home,
Yes.
lack of resources at home, some of the things you mentioned. And I was just looking this up again. I don't think most schools really screen kids for childhood trauma. I don't know if you're familiar with the ACEs test
I
or not.
am.
But, so one question is, does Manhattan use the ACEs test in the public school, and how can we make that the norm in all schools?
That's a great question. I think right now, social workers and special ed teachers probably use ACEs, but I don't think teachers use it as a screening, and I know there are some states that are requiring that students as they enter school use the ACEs screening, and I think that's very important. I think that's the direction to go, and here's why it's so important. Number one, it lets the teacher know what else is going on in that child's life. When I was teaching, I taught a class for a couple of semesters in leadership studies, and none of them knew what the ACEs test was. So when I gave it to them, so for those of you that don't know, it's traumatic situations children may have, such as a divorce, physical abuse, sexual abuse, and it ranks that there's about 10 of them, I think, and it ranks them. And some of them may not have any, but if you're an individual that has at least 5 ACEs, there's more tendencies that you might end up in substance abuse or some kind of traumatic situation. You will not be as successful, and we will not be able to provide you resources because we didn't know about it. So this alleviates some of it. But this is important to do because the increase in mental illness is dramatically there for our young children. We're talking about primary school-age children. The increase in suicide has increased dramatically for our youth as well as our rural communities. These are preventive things. We can actually have people with social workers, psychologists, psychiatrists, nurse practitioners involved in this right from the get-go. But we don't have those resources right now either, but we don't have the appropriate screening. And when we did the Mental Health Stabilization Center, sometimes by the time they come to us, it's too late. So I know lots of individuals that have a lot of resources, financial resources, professional resources, but they've had somebody commit suicide in their own families. So there isn't a discrimination for mentally individuals with mental illness. But I'm also on the National Board of Mental Illness for Kansas. So I understand this very clearly, and I think that's just one screening that we need to do, but there's so many more that we need to do to address it. That would equalize not only their education benefits, but their productivity in life in general. Because otherwise you're just putting out little putting Band-Aids to those spots that they need help with. Yeah. Yes?
Okay. So I'm going to have a bit of a setup before I get to the question. But the Mueller report documented lots of instances of potential obstruction of justice. Although he didn't issue a conclusion, that appears to be largely because of the DOJ policies saying that you can't indict a sitting president. The House is currently conducting an impeachment inquiry as to whether Donald Trump did abuse of office by withholding military funds in exchange for getting Ukraine to investigate the son of one of his political opponents. Then there's also the ongoing controversy around foreign countries paying Trump-owned properties, whether that's his hotel, whether that's his resorts, things like that. To me, it seems likely that the House will impeach Trump on at least some of those things. If that's the case, it will be going to the Senate. Which of those do you believe, if any, would constitute a removable offense for a president?
There's a lot in that question.
Yeah.
So I think right now, the House, it's important to do the impeachment inquiry. I think before you can go around impeaching anybody, you need to have that inquiry so you have enough evidence and you can find out if something was, if a law was broken,
Right.
if there was criminal activity. And only in that case, once you have that kind of evidence, can you go to impeachment? And then it would be on the Senate to approve it. I agree with that. But I think doing the impeachment inquiry right now is essential. And I think there's a lot of areas where we see obstruction of justice and where we see maybe the Constitution is not being upheld like it should be. And I think we need to recognize that when you take an oath to office, regardless of what level, you are taking an oath to the Constitution and not an individual. Sometimes people may not use their political capital like they should. They might be sitting on the sidelines, and when you do that, you're doing an injustice to democracy. I think the path we're going on is the right path. Now, with the Mueller's investigation, there was a lot there that, throughout the year and a half that was done, a lot of questions. But because he didn't straight out come out and say this is an impeachable offense, they couldn't do much about it. And I think we don't want to keep crying wolf all the time and then lose everybody thinking, well, there go the Democrats once again. But in this case with the Ukraine and all that was withheld, I think it's important for them to look into the facts. Sitting as a bystander out here, I don't have all the facts. You know, one of the things I know as a city commissioner is when people ask me about, let's say, this public nudity policy, we get so much material that we read before we make that decision. So I don't know all the nuts and bolts of everything they're reading and what they're seeing behind closed doors as far as those questions for each of those individuals that are coming and talking to the House committees. But this is important for taxpayer money, and it's important for democracy, and that inquiry is essential if we're going to go to impeachment. Nobody goes through this process of impeachment for fun. Nobody wants that to be done. But we are seeing, I think every day people wake up, at least I see it, where you feel like, oh my God, what's happening now? You know, there isn't even a time to take a break and think, okay, let me think about what happened yesterday. There's always something new every single day. You forget all of these other terrible things that happen because you become desensitized. So we're making this normal, and it can't be normal. This is not normal. So I think this is, like I said, it's extremely important to have the inquiry done. If it leads to impeachment, then they need to follow through with it. I don't think they have a choice. But they're going to be dragging their feet during the process as well. I think if you're subpoenaed, I don't know what the rules are about that, but I would assume as a common person, if I'm subpoenaed, I'm going to go. And I think that's the right thing to do, unless you have something to hide. If you don't have anything to hide, go face the facts and take care of business. That's what they're being paid for, and that's why we trust them. So,
Thank you.
thank you. Other questions? I'm sure there must be more.
What's your strategy?
Yes.
I was going to ask, how do you believe we can get the youth to be more politically involved? Like, not just on both nationally and locally, because I feel like the national stage gets a lot of attention, but also local
Right.
seems to be a little bit less behind. But just in total,
Okay.
you know.
When you say locally, do you mean like with your city and county politics or
I mean,
state politics?
the Board of Education elections are coming up here
Right.
next month. There's some
Yeah.
yeah.
I think there's a certain apathy. I think, when you don't have to think about putting food on the table, when you can just go on with life, it's just an afterthought. So in other countries, it's extreme serious business because your livelihood depends on your local government. When I became a citizen in 1986, the day I became a citizen, I took a lot of pride in voting. And sometimes we take that for granted. I vote in every election, every primary, every mail-in ballot I get, and I learn about it because I just not only value it, it's a privilege. And I look forward to it, oddly enough. I look forward to that. But I think we take it for granted because we have food, we have air conditioning, we have a car, we have sidewalks, we have water. So you feel like there's almost, life's going to go on. It's not going to impact me a whole lot. Well, we have to get back, we have to get to the point where everything does impact you. When I ran for State Board of Education, it was because they were going to make creationism and evolution were what was being discussed. And I said, wait a minute, we need to start talking more. But the importance for the young folks to get involved is, I think we need to touch base, like have this conversation. So one of the way I've always interacted with people is going to them. I don't wait for them to come to me. So I like talking in their student organizations, I like knocking on doors, I like making phone calls, and I actually go to where they are. Because what's convenient to me may not be convenient for you. There's a lot of county meetings that happen at noon. Who's going to take noon from lunch and go watch a commission meeting?
Right.
You're not going to do that. Who's going to come to my meeting if it's at 5 and you're having dinner with your parent, your family at home? That's not going to happen. So we need to actually go out to them as many ways as we can. That's the only way you will know what's going on. Because even if you have good intentions of being involved in politics, you may not even understand the issues because nobody brought it down to a level where you can understand how it's related to your life. And I think that's what the communication piece is missing. And we also think everybody's on social media, all I'll do is put it on Facebook or Twitter and they'll get it. No, they won't. What you see is people read the headline and they move on and they make all these assumptions just based on a headline. Nobody reads the entire article anymore. That's how impatient we've become. So even if you can't even read a 3 or 5 minute article and you just read the headline, that's your decision maker, we have a huge problem. But communication is so important. And anytime you want me to come and speak to somebody, I would love to do that as well. So that's something that you also need to take a little bit of initiative and say, hey, would you like to come to our organization or to our park or whatever it is? And the adult should also have the elected official should have the option to say yes or no. But it falls on both. But I think we have a gap because there's a lot of people that feel like it doesn't matter. I'm good, life will happen, who cares? My vote doesn't matter, I'm going to move on. It's too much trouble. So we can't do that. It is impacting us. So.
Can I ask you, so
Yeah.
what would be one tip you could give her as a young person as far as what you think would be helpful?
Well, I mean, okay. So the reason for bringing this up is because I feel like this is a discussion I've had with a couple of my administrators in my school. It's just the idea that school is the place where I spend most of my time. Traditionally we would assume that a child spends most of their time at home with their parents. But I spend about 14 hours a day at school, and even without all the extracurriculars, still a majority of my day is spent just in regular school days. I wake up in the morning, I say bye to my parents, I go to school, and I spend a lot of my time there. That's where my community is. I feel in touch with my teachers. And I do that from 7 years old until I'm 18.
Right.
So I think that that education often gets overlooked as a prime area to communicate and to reach out to younger people. Because we believe that, I don't know, maybe we believe that school is a place where we should only do a certain amount of things instead of trying to use it as a place of building community. And I think that's super important. With the upcoming Board of Education elections, my friend Tiana here and I, we took the initiative we created a politics club in our school.
Good.
And we're trying to get our students involved in trying to talk to some of the people who are running for the board, and seeing how we can get our students involved and get those people, the candidates running, to talk to schools instead of just going around talking to the community, because they are running for the Board of Education. It would make sense if they come to schools and speak to the people who are going to be directly affected by what's going on. I think that's something that we often overlook, the fact that the school place is somewhere where we're constantly at, and often gets overlooked as an area, like a prime area to communicate and to reach out to the community. And you seem to take a lot of interest in education. I was wondering if there'd be any specific ways that we can address that to make school more of a community rather than just a center where a student sits down and listens to a lecture every single day.
No, you bring up a great point. I'm going to take your question in a minute. So one of the things I did when I was mayor was I made this visits to school, visit the mayor. So the schools invited me into their schools because oftentimes we promote you know, firefighters, policemen, doctors, all of these other things, but they never know about local elected officials. They never heard of a mayor. So when I was walking through the halls of my classroom in my school in Ogden, I was just Miss Reddy. I wasn't Mayor anything. But when they saw me in the Veterans Day Parade, they were like, oh, there's Mayor Reddy, I know her. They need to see it to make it real for them. So when I started visiting all of my elementary schools as Mayor Reddy, then they would ask, what is a mayor? What does the mayor do? What does the council do? They don't know. And interestingly enough, their parents don't know. You know, parents would ask, so why aren't you doing something about our school budget? And I would say, that's not exactly what the city does, is the school budget.
Right.
But it's interesting because and parents, if they're not having that discussion, then the kids aren't. It's about exposure. Exposure, 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 as many ways as you can. And you're absolutely right, we need to get into the schools and be on them. And, you know, you need to be on them, because sometimes we talk to people that are voters or that are donors, and we forget everybody else. And you cannot let that happen. Yes?
I was just going to add on to what Santiago said real quick. So I think one of the things personally for me and a lot of the people that I know at school and the community is that we see all of these kids that are our age going around and doing all of these incredible things, like Greta Thunberg, who
Right.
has organized school strikes over the world, all over the world. And I think what kind of gets disheartening to us is seeing that happen on a big impact and feeling like we can't really directly affect that or help with that. But I think something that needs to happen, especially on the local level, is to understand that kids who want to be involved in politics or making a difference, they have the possibility to do that, not only like on a national level, but also just in their local community.
No, I absolutely agree. I think one of the things that we forget, as a teacher, I can relate to it so well, because first of all, when I go to school, when I was still teaching, people would often kids would ask me, because they're brutally honest, you know, where are you from? Why are you wearing that? Because I would wear my Indian clothes to school as well, or my bindi and everything. And those are wonderful. That, again, it's about exposure. But then when I became mayor, they would say, well, what does the mayor do? And they would talk about potholes. They didn't even know what the word potholes was. And so these, again, the vocabulary we use, the language we use, the words like budget or impact, it is about recycling, but local government is more than recycling. And sometimes I think we just get stuck in those little comfort zones about recycle, reuse, or pools or parks. They didn't know how pools actually got to be the way they are, or they don't know how many parks we actually have, or who maintains them, or anything like that. But I think it's something you should bring up with not only your students and your families, but with your administration. Your own local school board would be important if you went during public comment and had them hear your voice, what you want to see in your schools. That would be good, because every local organization has a public comment time. And you should do that. You should take advantage of it as often as you can. And we listen to them. So we do listen to public comment spaces. So, yeah.
I think you made an impact when you all walked out for the gun violence. It affected me. I was very proud of all of it.
It's true. Yeah.
So, real quickly, is there time to organize a candidate forum at the school and get it all cleared to the administration?
We're already working on it.
There you
We're
go.
working
And
on
when's
it.
that gonna be?
October, what day's that?
We're still working with our principal on it right now. So he is currently trying to organize it. So we're going to see if we can get that set up in time. Specifically, we're trying to work with some other forums around town to see if they want to host at Salina High South or Salina High Central to get that going. So we don't have a specific time yet, but our principal and the principal at Central, which we go to South, is working on it, and the superintendent is also on board for this forum. It's just figuring out the technical details.
And instead of just putting it on Facebook or something, write out a short press release and send it to your media. Because then it'll go out. That's what needs to happen. Even if they don't print it or if they print it, at least you're doing all of those process steps. So,
Yeah, and don't forget Salina Media Connection.
Yes, Mayor.
If you want to go to a candidates forum, follow me out of here in about 10 minutes, because there's one about 2 blocks down the street. But I don't think it's going to start right at 3 o'clock, and stay with Mayor Reddy and ask for as many
Thank you.
That's a
questions?
good idea. That's a good idea. You guys should, you know about that too? The
Yeah.
NAACP.
Yeah, at the Art Center.
Okay.
Now,
Yes.
I know you've met 10,000 people. We actually had a chance to speak at the Kansas League, maybe National League of Cities, I'm not sure.
Yeah,
But
both.
right, when I heard you were running, I said, well, she's not afraid of anything. She's
Thank you.
just from talking with you, and
Yeah,
yeah, energy and conviction sitting right there in that. at that
we can
table.
get stuff done, we really can, and it's going to the people. So coming to your point about, and your point about meeting people where they're at, so I've been to several NAACP meetings. I've been to lots of fraternities as well that were from historically black college communities. But it's going to them, going to the Indian communities, going to our Spanish-speaking communities. These people have not been asked to participate in the voting process. They're only actually asked to participate to vote and then forgotten. So they're not there for the dialogue. And one of the gentlemen at one of the NAACP meetings asked me, he said, well, how do we know we can trust you? You know, you come and ask us for our vote, how do we know? And I said, you know, I wish I can show you how many people I put on boards. One of the things that we have the authority to do is, as mayor, I can appoint people to boards, like a president would appoint people to boards. I make sure I'm picking people of color and women, because oftentimes people pick from their own comfort zones. And if you're a white male, you're going to pick from your white male comfort zone. If you're a white female, you're going to pick that. My comfort zone, unfortunately, is not that. I love all of my Caucasian friends. This is predominantly white, right? But my comfort zone, where I'm invited, is often to where there are people of color. Where I'm not invited, I just show up. Rotary, I just showed up. I became a member. You know, that's why I just show up.
And that's one thing when you're talking about your political club, I want to talk to you guys some more because my husband and I both run for state office in the past, and one of the hardest things to do is if you are the current holder of the office, you have entree into those places.
Right.
And they don't consider it to be ironically, they don't consider it to be political.
Mhm.
But if you are the opponent or the person running against the sitting person,
Yeah.
you have a heck of a time getting into any place. And I would guess the school's another place for that because you can have the mayor come in, and that's done. She's already been elected. She's been elected, or he's been elected. But are you gonna be able to bring in the opponent? And then you get into this whole thing. Oh, that's politics, and we can't have that here. And so that's, I think, one of the biggest obstacles that we have.
There are gatekeepers.
That's absolutely
There are
right.
gatekeepers in every organization. I've been asked many times, you know, what qualifications do you have? It's such a big jump from mayor to this. I said, do you know anything about me? Do you know, like, I am a teacher first, public education teacher, that I actually have hugged and loved and taught your children when you were being deployed, when you were getting a divorce, when you had ailments in your classroom? Do you know I've had chairs thrown at me? I've cleaned up vomit. I've cleaned up urine. Do you know I've loved your kids and I've taught them? And if they had a job right now, hopefully I had something to do with it. These are things that they take for granted. And so I don't know what kind of qualifications they're looking for, but I don't think, I know someone like me has to do things at a much higher level just to look average. And I don't mind that challenge. I'm going to take that challenge on because behind me is going to be a whole lot of other people that are going to walk those same footsteps because I'm walking this path that was laid for me by other people that walked before me. So this is not an easy path, but if I don't do this, nobody else will. And even whether I am successful or not in this bid, it has to be other people seeing me saying, well, she tried, let me do it. Why not? What do we got to lose? But if you don't give that opportunity for people to say no thank you and not ask them to the table, how will you know? How will you know? And you only have one life to make any kind of change. And I certainly don't have anything to lose. I have nothing to lose in this race. But I feel that I have a lot to offer. And I feel like so far I have in all the capacities, all the hats I've worn. I don't know a lot of rich people, but I know a lot of people. And my job is to go out there and get them to vote. You know, I don't have corporations backing me up. I don't have rich people writing me thousands of dollars of checks or even inviting me to their luncheons. But this is what I do. This is how I won before, and this is how I'm going to win this time, is by coming to you each and every single time. So Yeah, so anyway, I got off on a roll, so that's there. But, yes.
Without you, the kids would be unemployed, that sounds
That's
good.
what I'm saying. I mean, if you've ever walked a day, just a day in an elementary school teacher's life, you would understand. And I think more than being an elected official, being a teacher has taught me how to be a better elected official.
Just a brief comment from a conversation this morning at church with a school teacher. It seems as though she is tracking greater and greater tolerance among both teachers and administrators for class sizes of 25 and up, which in many cases makes no sense whatsoever. Any observations about that?
Yes, and you're absolutely right about that too. So let's talk about private school and public school, because people often talk about, well, let's do this voucher system. Private school, you don't need to be a certified teacher. You can hire anyone you would like that you feel is competent enough to teach it. If you can afford tuition to a private school, chances are the classrooms are already smaller, maybe 12, 15 kids maybe. Chances are they have a stable home. They're choosing where to go, and they probably have somebody at home who's going to take care of them when they get home. They might have 2 incomes. They have resources, let's say, if you can pay tuition. And you can choose who to accept to your school. So you're not going to accept everybody that opens the door and says, I want to sign up. You can pick and choose. Now let's talk about public schools. Public schools, I think, are the best. I'm a product of public school, and so are my children. And here's why they're the best. And if you invest your money in that way, they'll even get better. Because I have an opportunity as a teacher to teach 20 kids in my classroom. And anytime I teach 20 kids, they come from a variety of backgrounds. In Ogden, because we have transient population, I was teaching them thinking about deployments. I was reading a book, When Your Parent Is Gone, or something like that. And I said, how many of you have a parent gone? 10 of them raised their hand. And I said, where did they go? Not one of them had a parent deployed, but 10 of them had somebody in jail. That's not even why I was reading the book. So when I think about that, I think, wow, now I've learned a lesson. Now I have to change the way I'm looking at this, because their weekends are spent building relationship with whoever is incarcerated, for whatever reason. And what I know from children is they will love their parents till the day they die. Their parents, even if we think they are bad parents, a child will often love their parents because they're afraid of the unknown. They don't know what foster care holds for them. They don't know what adoption holds for them. And so I have to love them harder than ever before. You can teach anybody in this room right here how to teach science, math, social studies. Content is easy. Learning to care is hard. And learning to care for every child is even harder when they resist it. But that's important, and that you can't learn in college. It takes someone special. And I think those are the pieces we miss when we try to get money from public education to private education. Everybody can love a clean kid that comes in showered, smelling nice and pretty, has a nice haircut. Mom's bringing them the other peanut butter jelly sandwich and juice to go with it. And then they're checking their homework every night, and you know that homework's going to be turned in the next day. Here you have a kid who smells like urine every day, hasn't changed his clothes. You don't know in how long. You know they might have lice. You're not sure. You check their backpack. It's still there. 10 days of work is still there. Nobody's checked their backpack. You can say, well, that's just a bad parent. That parent never shows up to parent-teacher conferences anyway. That's what we assume. Therefore, we decrease our standards for that child because that parent is not going to show up for conferences anyway. We've just made it okay to discriminate, because it's too hard, because we know the parent's not going to show up. That doesn't happen in our other schools. But that's how discrimination and segregation works, because we give up because it's hard work. And it's hard to do all of that. But my kids were successful because of it. My kids made great friends. I have great friends. We have loving teachers. And I think it's essential to invest more and more into it. 25 students is not bad if you have paraprofessional support, if you have special education support, if you have social worker support. None of them get in it to get rich, but certainly nobody wants to stay poor. So let's at least pay them so they can at least meet the needs that they have in their personal lives. They're not there to make $100,000. They just want to make sure they have food to eat and health insurance to take care of them. And if we can provide that, they will love your child dearly forever. And that's what we need. So that's the missing piece. Because people don't see that, because that's not their voting block. So.
As a senator, what is your, what will your position be on, let's say, Affordable Care Act versus Medicare for All, or, I mean,
Right.
and the healthcare situation in the
I
state.
think President Obama did a wonderful job by having the Affordable Health Care Act. I think that took a lot of, it was there within when the Clinton administration was there, and we were able to get that. It does need to be tweaked, but I wish they would fund it appropriately, so it would be extremely successful. It fails when you don't fund it successfully, that's one of the problems. But at the same time, I also recognize Medicare for All. And here's why. Like I said, when I was a teacher, I had great health insurance. I couldn't meet my $2,000 deductible. What's the point?
Right.
So even if I had insurance. But with Medicare for All, even though it's a 5-year rollout plan, everybody should have insurance. Otherwise, you as individuals that have this great insurance are going to pay for it when they go to the ER room, are going to pay for it when they have a terminal illness. Because even great insurance only takes you so far. With Medicare for All, everybody's taken care of from the time they're born till the day they die. And that should be the way it is. I shouldn't have to worry about which kid is going to get braces. Medicare for All would take care of that. Which kid has to get glasses. Medicare for All would take care of that. Substance abuse and mental health is not covered under most insurances. Medicare for All would take care of that. And the only reason we don't think about it as much is because we put it off until somebody commits suicide and think, oh, we could have done more. Well, we're not giving them enough insurance because they can't go get the preventive care. And I think Medicare for All is something we really do need to discuss and see what we can do to make it happen. There are too many gaps. There are too many gaps even in the best health insurance right now. And even the richest people have gaps in their insurance. And the only reason people may not be embracing it is because they think it's a socialist idea, or they think it's not from a Republican think tank, or whatever it is. But I guarantee it, there's a group that has Medicare right now. The individuals that do have Medicare, they love it. They don't want to get that taken away. How many arguments do you have? Don't take my Medicare away. Something must be going on with that if they want to keep their Medicare. Why can't we all have that? So I think that's something we need to think about. Now I have insurance because of my husband, but for a long time I worried. I mean, I just didn't get x-rays done. I didn't get anything done because I couldn't pay for it. And that's with insurance. So I think we need to have that conversation for Medicare for All. So. Yeah.
So the Supreme Court is currently deciding whether or not sex in, I believe, Title VII prevents businesses from discriminating against LGBT employees. Mm-hmm. There is a bill that has been in the process of being considered in Congress for some time called the Equality Act, mm-hmm. which would kind of bypass that interpretation question and just make it that explicitly the law.
Right.
Would you support that if elected to the Senate?
What would it make explicitly the law?
That businesses can't fire someone for being LGBT.
LGBTQ, yeah. I think I would support it, and here's why. Because the city of Manhattan, my signature is on having sexual orientation and gender identity as a protected class. So within the city of Manhattan, you cannot discriminate, and I don't think you should. We used to have laws when you can discriminate against people of color, when you can discriminate even against having a disability of some kind. You couldn't go into certain places because they didn't have access. Those are all discriminatory policies. And any good business should have something like that in place. It would be, when we were talking even about smoking, businesses thought their businesses were going to collapse because now people can't smoke in their bars. In fact, business increased because now you have family members go there. And I think the world doesn't end by including more people. It only gets better. And we see that in the city of Manhattan when we have the Non-Discrimination Act ordinance passed. The world moved on. We have actually better pride parades than ever before. People are happy, and I feel very proud to say we're a welcoming community. And I think our businesses are doing just fine. None of them closed for that reason. They may have closed for a variety of other reasons, like online sales tax. Don't even get me started on that one. But it wasn't because of a discrimination policy.
So your ordinance doesn't just cover public employees, it covers the entire city, all private and public?
Yeah.
Because a lot of towns just start with the public employee
Right.
piece of
It's for
that,
the-
and they
it's
won't
for the
impose
city
it
of
on the
Manhattan.
private business, that's why I wondered.
Yeah, and we have that even, and the reason we moved forward with that is because Kansas State University has those policies. Our school district had that policy, the military has that policy. These are all of our partnering organizations. So it didn't seem right that we should have a policy discriminating in any one of our areas. The other thing is, we went one step even more in the sense that we had 2 police officers as liaisons to the Flint Hills Human Rights Organization, which is predominantly for LGBTQ. So they go and build that relationship, because oftentimes the fear is, what will they do to me if I get caught, if I'm a transgender? So now we're building that relationship, because the nuances between each of those letters is very different. Even though we encompass it as one, it's an education process to be L, G, B, or T, or Q. So that's a learning process even for our police officers, and it's only gotten better, like I said. I think we are a better community for it, and we are, I'm very proud of that. And I think the United States of America would be proud also. It's just the right thing to do. It'll take us a while to get there, but I think it's the right thing to do. Thank you.
Campaigns don't run themselves.
Oh, thank you so much, I appreciate it. Thank you for that shout out for me, yes.
That's what we,
And to the young,
So-
who here remembers the Vietnam War? Was in college during the Vietnam. Don't assume that you don't have a place. No one's going to give it to you. You have to walk in there and take it.
You just show up.
Right?
Yeah.
That war got ended by college students. Everybody else was busy working. Who had time to protest and organize folks? College students. You got a lot more power than what you got.
Thank
Take
you.
it.
Thanks for coming.
Absolutely.
Hear from you.
Take care. Please do.
good luck.
Yes. Yes, any more questions?
Do you have any, sorry, Janice, go ahead.
What's your strategy for getting votes out of the whole state? What are you gonna do to
That's
get
a
votes?
great question. So there seems to be the sense of urgency. You know, we are still 10 months away, but it seems like there's some people that are just so urgent. You need to have this much money already by now. I've only launched like 6 weeks ago. And you need to have like $500,000 right now, and you need to have all of these endorsements and everything. It's a long process, and I don't know why there's this sense of urgency. In my mind, I feel like we're doing it the right way. We have a good group of individuals. We have a surrogate in each of the 4 congressional districts. We are building relationships like this, so we have a scheduler who works with all of our county chairs and the Federation for Women and other organizations that they have, so I can make these meetings and talk to them. Participating in the parades and all of that, of course. We are working on our social media presence. We're going to do a lot of mailings, knocking on doors, of course. Majority, they say an election like this costs anywhere from $3 to $5 million. It's for staffing, so in a race like this, you have to pay staff and provide insurance for them as well, gas, whatever it is, food, whatever else they need. And you also have to have a lot of money for TV ads. Predominantly, that's where the money goes, it's for TV ads. We think it's social media, but it's still TV ads. But my path is the way I've won both my other elections, meeting people where they're at, constantly calling people when I'm not there, talking to as many voters as I can, doing as many mailings as I can, and having people that work on my behalf meet with people also. Continuing that conversation and talking about issues that matter to them. I don't know all the issues that are concerning to people, so I need to hear them all. We know what the sexy issues are because they're always talked about at the federal level and in the presidential elections. But there are a lot smaller issues that people don't think about. Infrastructure. As a local official, I work on a lot of infrastructure. So I want to know where all of those budget decisions are being made for our infrastructure, for our roads, for our airports. Rural family communities, you know, those that they're being impacted a lot by tariffs and trades and things that are going on. Suicide and mental health, those are huge issues. So those are things that I'm going to be working on throughout this process. But I'm hoping to gain more momentum as we go. We've had a lot of positive reactions and positive reinforcement, but at the same time, it's an arduous process. And it is going to take a ton of money. So if you want to donate, please do. And you can donate to all the people you want to donate to. So there's nothing about if I donate to one person, I can't donate to another. Until you've made up your mind, you can donate, you know, $10 to each one or $20 to each one until you figure out which candidate you're for. But I do suggest before you pick a candidate, listen to everybody. It's easy to like people, but liking people doesn't really mean that they're for policies the way you think about policies. I like a lot of people too. And I won in Manhattan getting Republicans to vote for me as well. You can't win in Kansas without the Republican vote. So they trust me. I've earned their trust, and I value that trust. Yes, they like me, but it took them a while to figure out who I was, and that's what this campaign's going to be. It's always about trust and judgment. And I'm going to try to convince everybody out there that I'm the right candidate for this position, because I truly believe I am. And hopefully you spread the message and want to join our team. And any questions you have, I definitely will answer too.
And I will make a point that the party cannot give her funds because she is a U.S. candidate for U.S. Senate. So it's all individual donations, so.
Right. Yes, yeah. And tell your friends about it too, so yes.
So, yes, I've just heard that Roger Marshall's leading the Republican candidates as far as his war chest is concerned.
Right.
And I know that you're in his district, so
Right.
you're probably somewhat familiar with him. So, how do you think you're going to be able to take him on
Right. Well,
if he becomes the nominee?
right, if he's the nominee, so be it. So I think if I win this primary, which I'm hopeful that I will, I'm very optimistic about that too. So once I win the primary, money comes in, because we want this seat bad enough. So it will come from outside sources. So I can't just depend within the residents of Kansas. When you're talking about a Senate race at this level, the national organizations also put their money into it. So if you look at it, there's a lot of PAC money in this. So that's what this is going to be. But I think I would be okay with facing it. In fact, I look forward to it. And here's why I look forward to it. He knows the talking points of the current president.
Right.
I have life experiences. I don't need talking points. This is my life. And so I'm not for a president or against a president. I'm about the Constitution, and I'm about the budget that impacts my communities. And I will speak to that without having a paper in front of me. I don't need to memorize anything. I know what I stand for, and I have strong convictions about it. And I'm not sure that the other candidate can say the same thing. So, you know.
Count on that.
Yeah. So I think that's what it's going to come down to. And I think there'll be a lot of people interested to see that conversation as well.
Yeah.
That was a meet and greet between U.S. Senate candidate Usha Reddi and Salina voters at Astra Books and Coffee House. You're watching Salina Media Connection.